Today I want to show you how to make some 3D embellishments to put on your quilt projects. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today I'm going to show you how to use some of your fabric and some fusible web to create some 3D embellishments that will give some extra interest to your quilt projects. So the first thing you need to do is figure out what kind of a shape you want to use to make your 3D embellishment. And I'm keeping it pretty simple. I'm going to make a leaf. So I took my Hoot-mon pattern, and you can see there's different leaves in here, and I chose the smaller leaf, and that's what I want to create as an embellishment. And so what I did is I just took this, photocopied it, and then I cut out the paper. I put it on, I glued it to freezer paper, and then cut out the template. Now, if you're wondering how to make templates from freezer paper, so I don't go into that whole thing in this video, you can look in the description below because I have a video on how to do that. I'll also include it above as well. So once I've got my template created, the next thing to do is to cut it out of some fabric. So I took some fabric, I cut out two identical shapes, so I put the fabric right sides together and cut out two pieces, two leaves, right? So there they are, okay? So normally I might just put these down and applique them on my background, which is what I did in Hoot-mon. But sometimes it's kind of fun to have a little bit more of interest, and so I want to make these more like a 3D kind of thing, right? Okay, so let's show you how to do that. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put these together, all right sides together, all right? Now, you can pin these. I like to use seam-align glue to put along the edges. You can find out more about seam-align glue by looking in the description below the video. I have a link to that product. But I just need to put a few little dots here along the edge to keep these two pieces together while I'm going to be stitching them. So I'll just do that. And I always have to remember to put the lid back on so it doesn't dry out in the applicator chip there. Never a good thing. Although I can use a pin just to open that up again should I need to. And I'm going to line this up as best I can here. All right, now I just need to press it to activate the seam-align glue so it'll actually hold together. And then the next thing I need to do is I'm going to actually sew all the way around the outside with a 1/4 inch seam. So all the way along the outside, okay? Leaving no opening. I know it seems strange, but just go with me on this, okay? So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and do that, and then I'm going to show you what that looks like and talk about our next steps. So you can see that I have sewn all the way around. Now, keep in mind this is going to make the shape a little bit smaller, right? Because I've taken that 1/4 inch seam. The pattern itself here was made for Fusible Web Appliqué, and apparently for Salem as well. So if I wanted to, I could have added a 1/4 inch extra around the pattern before I traced it, but I'm not too concerned about that in this particular case. But what I am concerned about is getting a nice look when I turn it. So let's talk about that. I'm going to clip off my points here, remove any excess fabric that I can. And then because I've got a curved shape here, I just want it to turn out really nicely. So I'm going to make some little snips in there. And you got to be really careful not to get into the stitching there. I like to get close but not cut through the stitching, hopefully. All right, that looks pretty good. Now the next thing is probably the trickiest part of this, and that is getting these two pieces apart, okay? So I gotta say, that's gonna be a little tricky. So you wanna pull them apart a little bit. And the reason I'm doing this is I wanna turn this right side out, okay? We didn't leave a hole to turn like you normally would do. We don't need to do that in this particular case. But what we do need to do is pull those fabrics apart, because on one of them, it doesn't matter which one, on one of them I want to make a slit so I can turn it right side out. Okay, so let me just get, it's worth taking a little bit extra time just making sure that those fabrics are really pulled away from each other before I will make a little snip here. Actually, I'm holding this side. Why don't I do this on this side? Make a little snip just so I can get my scissors in there. And you can use smaller scissors than this, obviously, depending on the size you're talking about. But once I'm in there, we're just going to cut along there. Just give me enough to turn it right side out. So however much you need to cut it, just do that. And then you're going to carefully and gently turn it right side out. And the next thing you're going to want to do is make sure that that's all nicely turned out, and that's where a point turner, or my favorite tool is that purple Thang, is going to come in handy. So I've got that purple thing here, and I'm going to carefully go to the little edges here. You can also use another tool, just like hemostats, to grab if you need to pull those points out. So here we go. We've got this all down nicely. I'm going to press it down. Yes, I can press my 3D embellishments. Okay. And roll your seam. So take your time, because this is the most important part of this process. All right, it's getting your shape the way you want it to be, because once you're done with this and we go to put it onto our project, you can't fuss with it anymore, okay? So fuss now, so save yourself some grief later where you look at it and go, why didn't I take some more time to do that the way I wanted? Okay, next step here is I'm going to go back and move Salem so I can get to my template again. All right, so I've got my template again. Remember we used this before? Still remembers. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to trace it onto my fusible web. Now, probably the easiest way to do this is up against a window, or if you have a light table, to do that. And when you're tracing the template this time, you actually want it to be smaller than this. So you can just trace it either a little bit inside if you want, or when you go to cut it, you're going to cut it inside the lines. So I'm just going to go and trace it, and then I'm going to show you how to cut it out and what it should look like when I go to put it on the back of my leaf. Okay, so I've traced the template. Now remember, when I made this, I had traced the template and then I had stitched in 1/4 inch on all sides, which is like making it a 1/2 inch smaller, right? So you can see the difference. So I want it to be small enough to fit onto this leaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by cutting out the template at the size I've got. All right, so then once I've got this cut out, then I can start making it smaller, right? So I'm just going to go in a ways and just try and cut out a little bit smaller, and then we'll see where we're at. And I'm going to come down here. I'm going to cut that tip off a little bit more. I'm just going to cut the tip, because it doesn't have to be sharp, right? It just has to fit inside. So now let's see what we're doing here. All right, I'm going to do the same thing at the other end. We're going to cut that tip off as well. I'm going to go back there. There we go. All right, so now I can see that I've got this inside. I've got covered enough. I mean, this has to get the leaf to stick down, right, on the back of the fabric. So what I want to do is I want to have the side where I made the slit face up, okay, because we want to cover that. We don't want that showing on the top, right? That's going to be the bottom part. We're going to take our fusible web and we're going to fuse it to the leaf. So you want to check and see, let's see which way goes better. Doesn't really matter, I guess. You want to check your manufacturer's instructions and see what they suggest you do for the first pressing, okay? So we're just going to press that down. We've still got the paper backing on at this point in time, but we're fusing that fusible web piece to the back of the leaf at this point in time. Okay, so we can always check and see. Oh yeah, it's adhered. Okay, it's gonna be a little hot too. It's adhered. Now the next step is that I want to take this off and actually put it on something. So I have a piece of background fabric here, and you're wondering why I have pins in it. Well, that's a good question, because when I put this down, there's a couple things that you need to do. Okay, you need to fuse it down onto your background fabric, and you also need to do some stitching to make it stay there, okay? Unless you're using, like, you could use a fabric glue on the back if you want to just use it in the center. I find the fusible web usually easier to do that, but I need to make sure it's going to stay there permanently. I could stitch down around the edges, but that kind of takes away from some of the 3D effect if I want it to kind of be a little bit loose on the edges. So what I want to do instead is, I want to put it down and I want to do some decorative stitching, or you can even do free motion quilting in the middle of that leaf. And because I'm using decorative stitches and because they're denser than just a straight stitch, you want to make sure that you've got some stabilizer behind. So I've got a couple sheets of kind of regular weight tearaway stabilizer on the back of my fabric. So I'm going to put my leaf down. I know it's so exciting, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to put the leaf down. So the first thing I need to do is to get this paper off the back. If you're having some trouble getting the paper off the back, you can always use a pin just to score that paper backing, and that'll make it much easier to come off. Since I happen to have a pin handy, that worked well for me. So we're going to take this off, and you'll see the fusible web on the back there. Okay, and then now I'm going to put on here. Let's get decorative. Let's put it on a diagonal. Why not, right? Okay, so let's fuse it down. And again, follow your manufacturer's instructions. They may tell you to use steam at this point in time. So my leaf is now pressed down, so you can see that it's only caught in the middle, which is great, so it gives that 3D look for sure. But I need to stitch down permanently, so I'm going to go to the machine, select a decorative stitch, just stitch down the center a bit there, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So I've used a Choco liner just to give me a reference line here, and then I'm going to add some stitching to the center of this. So I'm not going very fast when I'm doing this because you want to take your time when you're doing decorative stitches. The other thing I wanted to point out to you is that I'm actually using, there's a mark on my foot here, there's a center mark there, and that's what I'm lining up with this line here to keep this stitch pretty much in the center of this leaf. I'm going to go just a little bit further. So here's the result after I've added that decorative stitch down the center of the leaf embellishment. So it's holding it in place nicely. There was no rippling of the fabric or bunching up or anything, so I'm glad I put 2 layers of the stabilizer behind. I just need to take it off. And you can see that my leaf is not caught on the edges, but it gives that really nice 3D effect. And so the next time that you have some applique pieces, maybe you want to consider doing this with them instead to give them a 3D look. Thanks for watching today. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your quilting friends. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. Now, before you go, check out these other videos I've included just for you. And for more helpful quilting information, please go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com. Whoops, I'm getting caught on my pin. My pins are not, I wrecked my iron butt.